of these bridges have withstood the test of time thus far. They may not have been designed to hold the frequency and weight of the shipments they carry each day as freight trains travel across the state and region. The number of freight trains has increased, and even worse, obviously the danger of the freight trains has increased as we now are transporting hundreds of DOT 111 cars filled with crude oil, Bakken crude oil, which is very, very volatile and very flammable. We only had maybe 10 of them in 2009 in the state all year, and now we have hundreds and hundreds each week. We saw about 15 or 20 on this train that just passed by. So the bridges are deteriorating, and they're deteriorating fast. And one particularly here in Ulster County has deteriorated to the point that it would send shivers down your spine. That's the bridge we're standing in front of today. Look at the underside of the bridge. As you can see, it's in bad shape. The concrete foundation has deteriorated. There are cracks and exposed rebar. The bolts that held it together are loose or missing. And in any circumstance where the concrete foundation is chipped away or bolts have become loose is frightening, but as I said, it's more frightening in this bridge because of the DOT 111 tank cars that go over this many times a week. This is not any old bridge. The bridge runs right over the Rondout Creek. It's a major recreation and tourist destination for residents and visitors alike. It's also right in the middle of the exciting waterfront development going on here in the city of Kingston. Just imagine if the wear and tear on this bridge eventually catches up to us. One day you have an 80 car long freight train carrying crude oil, ethanol, methane across the state, and the bridge doesn't hold up. God forbid, that would be a disaster of epic proportions. Now, I'm not saying something is imminent, but it's possible. And when it comes to safety, my watchword has always been a stitch in time saves 9. And so here's the catch. Guess whose job it is to inspect rail bridges and ensure that they're structurally sound? The private rail companies who own the bridges. In this case, CSX. So there are roughly 3,000 train bridges across New York that are privately owned. They're operated by companies like CSX, Norfolk Southern, Canadian Pacific. And because they're privately owned, they may not be getting the attention and focus they need. Now, in the state of New York, if it's a publicly owned rail bridge, it has to be inspected every year, and DOT doesn't, state DOT. So the public ones are in good shape. But privately owned train bridges are not held to the same standard. Private train company bridges are required by the federal government to be inspected by the rail yard once a year. And it's important to keep in mind that many of these owners are saddled with the cost of maintenance if they deem the bridge unsafe. So they have a financial incentive to find the bridge safe. And that's why we need more federal inspectors looking over their shoulders. Inspections are subject to oversight by the Federal Railroad Administration, the FRA. But the FRA only has enough safety experts to audit less than 1% of the bridges in a given year. 1%. You heard me right. Less than 1% of the train bridges across the country receive any kind of independent audit in a given year. Why such a small inspector? Well, we're going to do a quiz, particularly for you, since you know lots of things. How many bridge inspectors are there, how many FRA employees are there that oversee the inspection of all these private bridges in the whole United States of America? 2, good guess. 2 plus 5, 7. That's it. Just 7 inspectors. It's sad. Shouldn't be smiling at this. It's sad. It's just incredulous. It makes you incredulous. There is, guess how many inspectors are assigned to cover the 3,000 private train bridges in New York? 1. And that inspector also has 13 other states to cover. So not only are there very few, but New York is disproportionately affected. We have a large number of these bridges because of our high population and because many of our bridges were built a long, long time ago. And we share 1 inspector with 13 other states. So think about it this way. In order for the 1 inspector assigned to New York to audit every bridge every year, which is what they should do, he would have to crisscross the state every day work 365 days a year, and inspect 8 bridges a day. And that would leave out the other 13 states for which he has jurisdiction. So, with this meager staff and dense caseload, it's next to impossible for these federal inspectors to review all of the potential safety concerns, and as a result, things could slip through the cracks. So what are we asking be done? 2 things. First, we're asking the FRA to get an inspector right away. We're asking the FRA to get an inspector here right away to look at this bridge train in Kingston. Because of all the bridges in the Hudson Valley, this is one of 2 or 3 that we find to be in the worst shape, that is the most traveled. So we need an inspection right away. Second, we're asking that the number of federal bridge inspectors be increased. If we added $1 million to the budget, we double the number. Now we need more than that, but it shows you, in a huge federal budget of trillions, a couple of $1 million to make sure these bridges are safe is not too much to ask. And that's what we're going to be pushing for. This rail bridge is too important. It's near some of the region's most important sites, the Hudson River, Rondout Creek, the towns all along the Hudson, to let them crumble any further. We should not wait, and that's what we want to try to do. And with that, let me turn it over to our great county executive, Mike Hine, and then Captain Lipson.
Thank you very much, Senator. First off, I want to thank the Senator. At this time of the year, oftentimes you'll find elected officials in Washington on vacation someplace. That's not what we have. We have an incredibly hard-working senator who understands the importance of this issue and the importance of being proactive. I think about this issue from the perspective of our ecology and what that really means from an environmental perspective. I think about what this means to people, the people of Ulster County. Look around you, their homes, people live here. If this bridge in any way, shape, or form had a catastrophic failure, we're talking about the loss of human life and an absolute devastation to our ecology. To think about environmental damage on that scale in our community, it's inconceivable. All because of what? A failure to have proper inspections on an annual basis by an independent review. The failure to have a true structural engineer assessing whether or not the bridge is going to collapse. And when you think about what's crossing these tracks on an absolute, what have we been here, 10 minutes?
2 bridges.
2 trains, enormous amounts of material. The idea that there could be in some way, shape, or form, like I said, a tragedy like that in this community is inconceivable. We're very blessed to have a senator who understands the importance of this, who's willing to take action. So, Senator, again, thank you so much
Mike.
for being here,
Thank you
making this an important issue.
You know, my view is you are just about the best county executive in New York and in the country, even though I haven't met most of them. Now we have somebody who works for Riverkeeper, which has done a great job here and in many other areas, who has personal experience with all of this, Captain Lipscomb. Tell him what you're captain of.
I run the Riverkeeper patrol boat.
There you go.
And I'm usually on that side of the bulkhead. I've never set foot on this property before, so my job is on the water.
It's the first time for everything.
There is. So thank you, Senator, for inviting us to participate today, and we appreciate your leadership very much on this issue. Riverkeeper, as you know, our focus is to protect and restore the Hudson, so our angle is somewhat different. And it's important to remember that just a few years ago, none of this crude oil transport was an issue. It's not just along the Hudson, it's along the Mohawk, it's along Lake Champlain. And now today it's 2 trains per day on this line, 3 million gallons each. It's about a barge a day down the Hudson at 4 million gallons, and it's a ship a week down the Hudson at 8 million gallons. So a vast amount of Bakken crude oil is moving in the valley. So we here in New York State now face the real possibility of a catastrophic accident and a spill such as have occurred at Lac Megantic in Quebec and Castleton, North Dakota, and Aliceville, Virginia, and Lynchburg, Virginia. Aliceville, Alabama, excuse me, and Lynchburg, Virginia. And, you know, an accident in one place isn't the same as an accident in another place. The Hudson is very vulnerable. We New Yorkers have been trying for decades to undo centuries of abuse to the Hudson. So it's not the same as an accident taking place in the middle of, for example, a grassland. The Hudson can't stand an accident, a crude oil accident at this time as we're trying to recover from PCBs and other issues that have been affecting the Hudson for many years. It's very important to understand one more thing about the threat we face. A lot of people think that if there's a spill, it can be cleaned up. And so the reality is that it can't be cleaned up. The derailment and spill in Lynchburg, Virginia in April, 30,000 gallons were spilled. None was recovered from the river. In the spill in the Mississippi in February this year, 34,000 gallons was spilled and 95 gallons was recovered. These were small spills relatively. Each of those tank cars that went by earlier in that train that had 100 cars or so had 30,000. So that represents one car. That's not a big accident. In both cases, the river current swept the oil away. And what we now know is that rail companies are contemplating moving tar sands crude, which is a sinking crude oil, down the Hudson Valley and the Mohawk. And a spill of sinking oil is a true nightmare because recovery is totally impossible. Now, while we've made a lot of progress in discussion and on paper in the region, in efforts to revise our spill response plans and our recovery capability, so far nothing on the ground has really changed. So we are not any more able to respond today than we were when this trade started. The only way to completely protect the rivers is to not move the product. But until that happens, the only and the best thing that we can do is prevent an accident. And that's why this initiative is so important. We were tipped off by fishermen of the decaying bridges down at Storm King. We saw the rotting foundations on this bridge from our patrol boat. We're getting photos from the Mohawk River, Lake Champlain, other areas in the Hudson Valley. So this is a statewide issue that we face right now. Obviously, it's a national issue, but we're talking about New York State. What the crude oil transport has done is it's brought to light a lack of regulatory oversight on railroads in general, and too great an autonomy that the railroads enjoy. Do truckers get to inspect their own trucks? No. Do oil barge and oil terminal companies get to inspect their barges and tanks themselves? No. The Coast Guard does that. Do commercial aircraft owners get to inspect their own aircraft and sign them off? No. Do you get to inspect your own car? No. But the railroad companies get to inspect their own gear, and they get to decide that they're going to keep tank cars in place that for 2 decades have been found inadequate. We need the same kind of oversight that you have with your personal car, and that we have on our highways with 18-wheelers. We need it with rail transport. We need independent, enforceable oversight immediately. Suspect rail infrastructure, like crumbling bridges, need to be immediately inspected by third-party engineers. Traffic must be rerouted around any compromised structures until repairs are made. Not another study, but rerouting the trains so that they are not on the bridges. Then there's no risk. We need those changes, and we need these inspections in place immediately. There's just too much at risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. Okay, good job. Questions, first on this subject and on others. The indefatigable, ever-present Mr. Kimball.
So as an
wearing
alternative,
his yellow hat for the first time at the Schumer press conference.
yeah, well, I decided not to get my head wet. As an alternative, what are your thoughts on Pilgrim Pipeline? Do you support it?
You know, the Pilgrim Pipeline is something that, bottom line, it has to be done safe, environmental way, and I haven't seen the plans that would allow that to happen at this point. This is the pipeline that's going through Lake Champlain and then down under the thruway.
Yeah, along the thruway corridor.
Yeah, along the thruway corridor.
back and
I'd
forth.
have to see the plans before I'm convinced that it could be used. I wouldn't rule it out, but I have to see the plans and make sure it's safe.
Senator Schumer, you mentioned a number of things that you saw wrong with this bridge, but you also said that it's out of the state. This is like one of 2 or 3 that's
These are one of the 2 or 3 most dangerous if you look at deterioration and population.
And
amidst the bridge.
Okay, I just wanted to know how you went about.
Well, this was Riverkeeper's survey, and that's what they did.
Okay.
I should
Go ahead.
add, however, that we're a small organization, and so
They haven't looked at every
we're
bridge.
relying on our relationship with the public to bring bridges to us. And as I said, we now are receiving photos from as far north as Lake Champlain and as far west as the Mohawk River of other bridges. And so we're not engineers. We're not going to say what's good or bad. We're saying who knows whether these bridges are good or bad.
Do you have historical data on this bridge?
No, I don't. And all I'm going on this bridge is at low tide. The concrete footings under that southern edge are wasp wasted by probably ice, freeze and thaw. The concrete is wasted away, and we'd be happy to show you those photos. And again, our position isn't the bridge is bad or the bridge is good. Our position is that if the corner of your school, your child's school, had a foundation that looked like that, someone would have decided whether it's good or bad.
Our position is simple. We want it inspected. We see some damage. How bad is it? Nobody knows. Somebody should know. No one independent knows.
And then the overarching issue of the fact that the system is broken. The idea of having one inspector for 13 different states and the inability to possibly do the kind of structural inspections that are needed is inconceivable.
Yes, sir.
Senator, in hindsight, it's been about 18 or 19 years. Do you think if we still had an Interstate Commerce Commission that there'd be more oversight over issues like this?
Well, we certainly need more oversight over transportation in general. You know, I've been heavily involved in commuting rail with the horrible accident in Spuyten Duyvil, and there wasn't enough there. There's not enough here. So certainly our inspection system is lagging. Well, part of it is just the cuts to government. When you do sequestration, it sounds like a big word. Why not? Cut out all the waste. But you may be cutting out inspectors who deal with safety.
Last year you held a similar press conference about the tanker cars themselves. How's that coming along?
Good. Now there we're making good progress. We've pushed DOT. At my pushing, they have actually put out proposed regulations which could require all the 111 cars to be taken off the tracks in 2 years. And I'm very hopeful that will happen. Where the DOT has come out with that proposal. It's now at OMB. We're pushing OMB to get it out. Now they could say 2 years. They could say a little longer. We want 2 years.
Does a Republican Senate mean what you're pushing is going to be harder to get through?
It's possible. We have to see which direction our Republican colleagues move in. Safety shouldn't be a Democratic or Republican issue, but you know, they tend sometimes to be a little more in favor of the industry and the special interests. Not always, sometimes.
I would also like to add, maybe even to the Republican Congress who's coming into the new year, that this is an economic situation too. If that bridge collapses, it's not just an environmental catastrophe, but it's an economical problem for all the marina owners, including this one.
Look,
everyone down there, right through the marinas up here, the boat owners, the restaurant owners.
Absolutely.
As Mr. Hines knows, this Kingston is just starting to get back.
Just as the waterfront is coming
starting
back,
to
this
get
would
back,
take
and
it.
this
It
would
would be
just
catastrophic.
destroy.
You bet. And there could be very well loss of life. You know, when one of these things, even one car gets derailed, the explosion is fierce. Other questions? Okay,
Can we go off topic?
we can.
Do you have any
Off-topic
thoughts?
is my middle name.
Do you have any thoughts about the proposal to use the bank settlement to finance the Tappan Zee Bridge?
I have not studied that, so I couldn't give you an answer.
Do you have any comments about the police officers being shot in New York City?
Yeah, I do. I've given it to your affiliates in many other places, but here's what first. The loss of these two young men is just devastating. I didn't know them, but they seem like such fine people, such dedicated people. And they were murdered in a despicable and horrible way simply because they wore a blue uniform and sat in a police car, just for who they were. And that sort of puts a dagger in the heart, not just of these people, that's the worst thing of all, but of society. So I think we have to do everything we can to prevent it. I'm not going to get into the specific details of who did what until after the holiday season. Let's give them a good burial. There's no good burial, but let's give them a burial where everyone's come together, a peaceful and respectful burial. And then we'll move on from there.
Mike, you doing off topic?
What you got?
Niagara Bottling, what are your thoughts?
Our perspective is really a desire for an inclusive process, and it's been our perspective all along. And we've pushed for that at town board meetings, through the county planners, and that's been our perspective all along.
Inclusive in
Do
what way?
we have concerns? Well, clearly it's an issue that affects more than just one town. It affects the city of Kingston, it affects Woodstock, it affects an entire region. And so, from our perspective on that, it's very simple. It needs to be an inclusive process, and we have serious concerns.
Do you think they should get started up in New York?
I'll leave that to the governor to decide.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
one more, sorry.
Mr. Off Topic himself.
Yes. Do you hope in the new year that the Obama's plan for immigration will get off the ground?
Well, look, the real solution to our immigration mess is to pass the bipartisan comprehensive bill that Senator McCain and I worked on and passed the Senate with 68 votes. Our borders are a mess. We would strengthen and toughen up things at the border. I hear a lot of people who say, strengthen the border first. That's what our bill does. It would make sure that people who cross the border and take jobs away from Americans couldn't, because we put the onus on employers. And it would provide not amnesty, but a difficult, long, but fair path to citizenship for the people who are here. They'd, for the first time, have to learn English before getting a green card. They'd have to work, they'd have to pay back taxes, they'd have to register, they'd have to pay a fine and admit wrongdoing. It was a bill that we thought would get broad support in the House, and it didn't. And that's the solution to this. And I hope the new House will reconsider, for both substantive reasons and political reasons. Many prognosticators say, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, a strong Republican business leader, said, Republicans ought not nominate a candidate if they don't pass the immigration bill. Okay? Thank you all very much, and a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and a good year to one and all. Thank you. Okay, everybody, thanks.
Senator, I just wanted to introduce you to John, the general manager.
Hi,
Possibly
John.
supposed to be
Nice to meet you. Thanks for your good comments. What's your last name? Hendrickson. Very nice. Are you related to the Hendricksons from Brooklyn, an old Dutch family?
I'm from Brooklyn.
There's Hendrickson Street.
Yes, there is.
It's near my house.
And where are you from?
St. Thomas Aquinas Church. It's
And
Mullen.
why?
Good for you. Good, my wife. Good. Okay, thanks, everybody.
The whole. Oh. How long have you been there?
Good.
So I'm thinking that I.
Bye, everybody. Captain,
we
thank
did
you. Riverkeeper people, thank you. Nice to see you. Del, all the greatest.
Yeah, we did a snow. Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry, I just gotta pack this.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
No,
I should have got that right away.
Let's
That's me.
Yeah.
I thought you were pressing the spelling apart.
Thank you.
You?
No, so we did that story on waterways.
Got cold.
Cold, but not too wet.
Could have been a lot worse.